If you want to do business with the government or defence, then you need to think about tendering. Tendering is the way that the government spend their money. They basically have to go through a process for taxpayer dollars and evaluate suppliers on different criteria. They then shortlist and evaluate the right supplier based on a number of factors, and it's not always price. Sometimes it's about value for money. Now, that value for money doesn't always mean the cheapest. It can mean the fact that you're going to be more sustainable, that you're better for the economy, that you can deliver a reasonably good price, and they understand that they're taking you through a very complex process, and that you also need to cover the costs of all of your reporting requirements, of your tendering process, etc. Today we're going to look at AusTender, which is the federal government's tendering platform. Now, each state government also has their own tendering platforms, which you will also need to apply for if you just want to do work on a state level. But at the federal level, that's where you're supplying the Australian government as a whole, and you will need to go through the AusTender platform to view the available tenders and apply for them. So let's dive in and take a look. Okay, so we're on the website, and in the top right you can see we've got login or new user registration. As we come down here, you can see business opportunities, and there are links to the state tendering portals and also tendering partner opportunities, which is interesting because it's showing different countries have their own tendering platforms. You can actually see tenders in those countries in their portals and make your submissions in there. So when you go into log in as a new user, you're going to have a whole bunch of questions. So basically they just want you to create an account. Then it's going to go through and verify some further details, what country you're in, address. And then you have to sign off on some criteria. Now, AusTender are constantly trying to keep the portal fresh. And if you don't access it within 12 months, your account access will be deleted, which is fine. It just means you need to log in again with new account. Or if you're within the 12 months, each time you log in, it will kind of renew. So they have an auto delete policy. It just keeps them from having millions of people registered as users in the system. Okay, so I've just logged in and created an account, and now it's taking me through the notification settings. So notifications are the types of jobs that you want to be notified for. For example, if I'm a plumbing company, I want to know about all jobs that are around so that it will send me a notification saying we're going to build a new base, we're going to build a new office, and we need a plumber. So if I am in IT, that's not really going to be relevant. So I can select the type of notifications that I want to be informed about. Do I want to be notified by planned procurement? So these are things that are already decided upon. The next one is approaches to market. So an approach to market is kind of like they don't really know the state of the market yet. They don't know if there is people available to supply that. So they really just want to get ideas. So they're kind of going out to the market to say, who's out there? Is this possible? What do you guys think? And then people are going to add submissions or register their interest in advance. And then that's when they will trigger off the planned procurements to say, right, we kind of need this thing coming up in future. We know that there's a certain amount of people available to do it and that are interested. Now we're going to go live with the RFQ or the RFT, request for tender. So you can put in a keyword, plumber, fire, but in this I've got the category. And as I go through here, you can see the categories are a little bit more high level. So we've got apparel, luggage, and personal care products. So let's just say, for example, the government wanted to do a tender for someone who's going to provide uniforms to police. That's the kind of thing that you would get here. Now, bear in mind that because we're talking at the federal level, it would be the uniforms for the Australian Federal Police, not for the state police, which would be a state level procurement process. So at this point, if it was apparel, luggage, and personal care items, then that could easily be a tender to supply the police uniforms, perhaps their belt webbing that holds their handcuffs, spray, taser, etc. And the personal care products might be hand sanitizer and or sunscreen. So all of those things would fit in that category. Now, at the start of the video, I did mention that this was for supply to government and or defence. Whilst I gave the example of the Australian Federal Police, the federal government portal is responsible for a number of things, which could be providing calculators to the Bureau of Statistics. It could be providing drug testing services to the airports. It could be providing machinery and equipment for agriculture and farming. So there are a number of areas. It's not just about defense related things. It could be literally any product or service that could be provided to this area. I've selected 2 categories here. Next, I'm going to go by state. Now, whilst I am applying to a government portal, it still applies at the federal ownership level, but the Australian federal government work in all areas of Australia. So I might only select the locations that I can physically service. For example, we're in Queensland. However, because we run an online service, I might be able to select all of them. So the reason why you would select the state is just so that you can reduce the amount of volume for all of the tenders. So if there's a high volume of tenders coming through the system, it's a lot of work to apply for any of them. So you may as well filter down to a set that you can practically deliver. Don't go and promise things that you can't actually achieve. Once you've applied for these tenders, then you have a much higher chance of actually winning the contract. So I've just clicked into the ATM type, and no, that's not the automatic teller machine. So I've actually just clicked this drop down, and it kind of loads a bit funny on my screen. But this ATM stands for approach to market. So the approach to market could be for the disposal of assets. So say, for example, when the Australian Army adopted the G series of vehicles from Mercedes-Benz, they got rid of the old Unimogs, the Land Rover Defender 110s, and a number of 6Bs and things like that. Now, they are vehicles and they need to be disposed of, which means that they probably went to an auction house for sale. So the auction house would have applied for a tender to actually dispose of the assets. So the approach to market would be, we want to get rid of these assets. And some people might say, yes, we want to take them so that we can sell them off as scrap value. And there'll be an agreed percentage commission that they get for that, or a fixed fee or something like that. Or they would purchase. So say, for example, the disposal of assets may be that the auction houses directly purchased the vehicles and then sold them off because they thought they could sell them for a profit. Or perhaps someone might actually want to use the fleet on an ongoing basis and buy them for their own personal use. So the disposal of assets, basically the government don't want to sit there on car sales or Gumtree and start managing the sales of all these ads. They're basically just going to sell it off at scale to someone who has the ability to then distribute the smaller number of items. Request for tender and request for proposal, pretty self-explanatory. Request for information is just trying to understand the market, understand the capability that's out there, how would this be solved, etc. Expression of interest, how many people are interested in actually applying for a tender or doing a piece of work. If they can't find anyone, they may have to rethink the way that they present the tender or what they think the offer is that they're going to go to market with. Notice, so obviously if you just want to find out about information coming your way, industry briefings and request for quote. So industry briefing is where they basically want to understand challenges in the industry to then inform legislation. And then you request for quote, which is quite simply, we want 1,000 widgets, put in your price. So I've selected request for tender, request for proposal, expression of interest, and request for quote. The next is whether you want a CSV file attachment. I always say yes, because so when they send you an email, it's going to be a link to the portal to go and log into the portal. But I find it much easier if I receive the CSV file that I can just open the Excel or the CSV, see all the line items of what's actually being offered, because sometimes it may not be relevant. I don't want to go and spend extra time digging through if it's not actually relevant to me. So then there's a confirmation screen. You just click through confirm, and that's pretty much it. Now, a tender is a rather large and complicated process that the Australian government would buy via tender, because it helps to create a little bit more clarity and certainty around the use of taxpayers' money. They don't want to go to market and then basically sell to their friends, because that involves corruption and all sorts of bad political behaviour. So by selling through tender, they get to select their buyers more effectively, make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, make sure they have all the right compliances, that they're getting reasonably good value for money, because a lot of these projects are worth many, many millions of dollars. They're probably not going to do very many bids or tenders for less than 20 or 30 million dollars. Most of these are going to be fairly significant. Anything below that, they're going to look at running what's called a panel. And you can see panel buyers just down here. A panel is kind of like a tender that you apply for, where you can apply for multiple things. It's kind of like a short list. So to be put on a panel you are effectively on a list of pre-approved suppliers. So that way, a lot of the smaller tenders will still require an application, but because you're on the panel, you've kind of done a bit of pre-work. So you really only need to do the questions that specifically relate to that particular tender or that particular offering for the panel. So generally, to get on a panel is quite a good thing. It's a fair bit of work to get there, but once you're on the panel, you're then in a reduced set of potential suppliers. So let's just say you've got 1,000 people in the market, 100 of them apply for the panel, 10 get accepted onto the panel, and then every time that they have a small job that's small enough for the panel, which could be $5 million, $10 million, slightly smaller, could be $1 million. But those things go to the panel and not to the wider market, because that set of potential suppliers has been pre-approved. It just allows for a faster process, reduces the amount of effort that these suppliers have to go to, and can be more frequent and rapid. So the panel of 10, you might still have to do a secondary tender on a much smaller scale, but you're now only competing with those 10. Now, I say 10 because the panel process is so difficult and the tendering process is so difficult. There are so many businesses that don't even try. They don't go anywhere near it, and they are so unlikely to win a contract. There are contracts that have been won because only one person actually applied, or only one person got through that far into the process. So sometimes you've got tenders that are non-conforming. Yes, there's a lot of requirements, but it doesn't mean you have to meet them all. It might mean that you don't have your ISO certification, or you don't have 2701, whatever the certification is, or whatever the criteria is. As long as you meet the core criteria, you're an Australian business, you pay tax, you employ Australian staff, and you are a reputable supplier, then you've got a much better chance of winning that tender over someone who never applied. So make sure you spend the time and you do actually apply for these things, even if you don't think you meet all of the criteria, even if your bid is not quite compliant in the sense that you don't tick every single box. Sometimes you'll still win because nobody else actually got anywhere near the requirements either. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you found this useful, please do give a like, a subscribe, and let us know what you thought in the comments. We do also have an online community where we talk about government and defence tendering and winning those contracts. So there'll be a link in the description where you can join the relevant community and then just ask for access to the government area or for the defence area. There's online courses and training materials to help guide you through your government contracting experience. So thank you for watching again, and please keep an eye out for the next video.